Hello everyone, this is Chris from the MACI team, and the goal of this tutorial is to explain how to use and install MACI and MACI RPGF. MACI is minimal anti-collusion infrastructure. It's a public good open source that serves as the infrastructure to deploy and create private on-chain voting. And one of the use case is public good fundings, operatic funding, or retroactive public good funding. And we have a front end which is called MACI RPGF, which enables us to deploy rounds and communities, or well, the coordinators or the leads of the rounds can define who can vote and how to distribute funds. Um, so let's start with heading up to the documentation, the MACI RPGF repo. We are going to interact with two repos, the MACI RPGF one and the MACI repo. So if we head up to the documentation, you can go over setup and deployment. And here's a list of steps. I'm going to start with deploying MACI because I definitely want to install some parameters before we start actually with the front end. So I'm just going to clone the MACI repo. Now that the repo is downloaded, I can just move into it. And I need to make sure to use one of the latest releases. So for now, I'm going to use V124 and I'm going to install everything. Actually, I need to make sure that I'm using Node. It's recommended to use Node 18 or 20. In this case, I'm using Node 20. So now I'm going to install everything and actually I'm going to build the project. As you can see right now, it's building. Once it's finished, we can start downloading the CK files. There's more information on the main MACI side documentation about what these parameters are. For now, we just need to make sure that if we are running a testnet round, we should use the test CKs. If we are running a production round, we definitely need to use the ceremony keys. In order to use the ceremony key, we need to do another step before building, which is actually exporting the state depth tree to 6, which is the value that you use for the ceremony keys. For now, I'm just going to use the test key as is smaller, so I can actually download it faster. And I'm going to make another tutorial about how setting up everything for production. For now, let's focus on testnet. Okay, now that the keys are downloaded, usually they are downloaded on the um, CLI folder. So you can see here we have the CKs. These are the ones that we download. Depending on which kind of project you might need quadratic voting or no quadratic voting, MACI RPGF right now only works with no QB keys. So the next step is actually to set up on the environment files and deploy the contract. So I'm just going to move into the contracts folder, and then I'm going to copy the environment file and define the values. I'm going to use a burner mnemonic. This is the one that I'm going to use to deploy the contracts. Then my goal is to deploy it on Optimus and Sepolia. We support multiple networks by default. Right now, Scroll Sepolia, Optimus and Sepolia. Definitely, if you want to add more, you can submit a PR. And the last one that I need to add is the Optimus Etherscan API key because I want to verify the contracts. So once I have deployed, set up this, um, I need a pair of MACI keys. So the easiest way to do it is heading up to the key. Whoop. And run the gen MACI key command. So now I can generate a MACI keeper. The output is this. The public key we are going to set up in our config file, and the private key we need to save it in a secure place because this is the one we use to decrypt the codes. So if you lose this one, you're not going to be able to finish the round. Or in this case, you're not going to be able to prove the poll. So the next step is actually setting up the contracts configuration. So I'm just going to head back to the contracts. I'm going to copy the config files. And I'm going to open that config file. Actually, I think it's here. Okay, so maybe I can explain a little what's happening with this file. First, we define a network. In this case, I'm going to use Optimism Sepolia. Then I need to define the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper is the way to define how we define who can vote. Right now we have multiple gatekeepers in the documentation, everything related to them. And for this, I'm going to use for this video, I'm going to use the Ethereum attestation service, which means that in order for anyone to vote requires to have an attestation from an address. And as a suggestion, I always I recommend that you head to Ethereum attestation service scanner and actually make sure that the schema that you're using are valid. So I can quickly verify it by just opening and copy pasting this schema, pasting it over here. And as you can see, there's a type and round, and this same one exists. So pretty much we can make sure that this schema is valid. The next thing that we need to make sure that it's correct, as I mentioned, we have it in the code, but it's always good practice to validate with the Ethereum attestation service documentation. It's the Ethereum attestation contract. So as I'm using Optimism Sepolia, I need this address. Seems like they have a small typo over here. Doesn't matter. You can see this Ethereum attestation address is different because I had Sepolia here. So I'm just going to copy the new one. I'm going to deploy it when I deploy the contracts. The tester address is actually the address of the coordinator, in this case, mine. So let's add it over here. And then on the MACI, I already have the ES gatekeeper, the state trip. These are the values for the test keys. So right now I don't have to change it. If I had to deploy it on using ceremony keys, I will need to change these values. The next step is defining the values that I will use for deploying, the keys. And as I mentioned, for MACI RPGF, we are going to use the non-QB ones. I know that these values are on the client, so I just going to quickly check just to make sure. As you can see, process non-QB 10 to 1 to they are there. Okay, now the next important information is that I need to set up the poll duration. This is in seconds. So this means that this round is going to last 1 hour, which I think is enough, at least for this tutorial. Then I need to set up the MACI public key or the coordinator public key of the coordinator, which in this case is the one I generated previously. So let's update this one. This is the public key. I know that we are used to the PK, private key. in some places, but no, it's a public key, and you can see it here, the parameter. Okay, so I think we are ready to deploy the contracts. So we need to run the PnP deploy and use the network. So in this case, it's PnP deploy Optimism Zapolia. You can see here we have the contract calls. The one that is more important for us is the MACI contract, which are going to use to connect to the front end. So we need to note that value. Okay, now that the deployment is done, as I mentioned, we need to grab the MACI contract, which is this one. So I'm just going to copy it, and we can move on into the front end, but there's another thing that we need to set up over here, which is the subgraph. So before deploying the subgraph, actually, I would like to deploy the poll. So in some terminology, you could find this like a funding round, but a poll is like the period of time where people are able to vote. So I'm going to deploy it, and this is going to run over this amount of period that we specify. If you are a quick observer, you have noticed that I had this setup as true. As I mentioned, we are using MACI RPGF, which means we don't want to use quadratic voting. So what I'm going to do is just set up auto fails, and I'm just going to deploy the contracts again. And this is fairly easy as I already have done it. I'm going to deploy both MACI contract and the poll. Okay, poll is now deployed. I'm going to grab again the MACI contract. And the next step will be to deploy the subgraph. The subgraph is needed on the front end. So something important is for now, the subgraph code is only on the developer branch. So actually I will need to quickly check out into the development branch. This is only temporal. When we release the new MACI version, you will be able to see both the subgraph and everything on the same repo. So I'm just going to head to the subgraph folder, and on the config here, I need to set up the MACI contract and the MACI start block. So I'm just going to copy this one, and I can verify the block quickly on Zapolia OP scan. So I'm just going to set up the contract here, and I'm going to grab this value. Here, actually, I'm going to need it in other places, so I'm just going to save it. And now I need to head up to the Graph Studio. So I'm just going to go over there, and this tutorial is going to be using Subgraph Studio, but in theory you could also use Alchemy Subgraph. So I'm going to call it MACI RPGF. Actually, MACI Subgraph. So I'm going to create MACI Subgraph. I can set some information over here. I don't think it's needed. And the most important of this one is actually doing the authentication. So on the subgraph subfolder, I'm going to um, build. Actually, I needed to compile everything. This is something that is something that you need to do. And like I mentioned, the reason is because I'm switching branches, which is not something that you should expect when we release a new version. So now I head back to the subgraph, npm build. Now it works. I configured this to work specifically with Optimism Zapolia. If I needed to change the network, I can specify an M file, specifically the network one and the version ones. One easy way is to create a file and then just export it. But for now, as I'm using the same Optimism Zapolia network, it's not needed. I'm going to do a graph authentication so that way I can just deploy it over to there. Deploy key was set up, so now I can deploy the graph running PnP run deploy. Going to specify the version. This always changes, so if you change a new deploy, you might need to update it. And I'm going to grab this URL as I'm going to need it for the front end. Okay, so just so I don't forget, I'm going to head back into the branch that was before. I'm going to link and I'm going to build. I'm going to use this MACI folder again when I try to finalize the poll. And now that we have deployed our graph, what I'm going to do is actually set up MACI RPGF. So I'm just going to leave this folder and I'm going to fork the MACI RPGF repo. I'm going to move into the folder. And before installing everything, I want to make sure that I'm having set up everything right. So I can make sure by first copying on the environment variables. So the most important values that we need to make sure to have is the alchemy key. So I'm just going to use one I have ready for this demo. Wallet Connect ID for using mobile wallets. I'm going to use for now this one. This is a text that goes into the front end. This is the public run ID. This is important because this is where we are going to identify which application are going to be in this round. So for now, I'm going to call it test tutorial one. Can define here the number of votes. How are going to name the votes? The number of votes we define it when we deploy the contracts. These are the voting periods. For now, I want to define the public admin address, which is the address that is going to approve the projects. So in this case, I'm going to use mine again. Approval schema. As I mentioned before, we can verify this in Ethereum attestation service. You can see this one exists. I always recommend verifying the schemas because sometimes you are putting one which is not valid or is from another network. And you can make sure by just connecting to the network where you are going to do the test, pasting the schema here. As you can see now, I have the name, metadata, etc. This particular schema is for the projects listing. The ES contracts, we can even verify here if we are having the correct ones. So let's go to Optimist and Zapolia. We have 21, 21, and 20. 21 and 20. Okay. We don't really need this private key unless we are going to deploy schemas. It's easier to just deploy using AS scan or use one that is already deployed. So now I need to configure the MACI contract and the log start. And of course the subgraph. This next public tally URL we are going to use when we are going to show the results. So now I'm ready to install. Now that it's installed, I can start. Oh, actually, I'm forgetting one URL. As you can see now, it's loading. It says that voting has ended because I have misconfigured these values. As you can see, I'm using all values. So I'm going to use to take dates. And I want to create application. So in order to create application, you need to have a registration, a valid registration date. So let's say I'm going to say the registration actually ends tomorrow. So let's change this quickly. And you can see now that I can create an application. Okay, so first, let me show you what this front end about. And this front end is going to change in the future. We are doing some design improvements, but for now, that functionality is going to keep the same. So we have, if you are an admin, you're able to see these two buttons. Here, application, this menu, applications and voters. So here you can accept application, and voters you can add voters. If you are using Ethereum attestation service, what is going to happen is that you set up an address here, and this address is going to be valid to vote. If you are using something as Supa's Gatekeeper, then you're not going to see these voters, but in reality, you're going to be able to sign up just using your Supa's proofs. Okay, so now, while we wait this to be mined, I'm going to create a project. So I can use any image. Let me create. Okay, so I'm just going to add a small picture, and I'm going to add a banner. Going to fill up some information. These categories are specific for Optimism RetroPGF, where you can change in the front end. In the end, what we validate is the data on that station, so you can change it with no issues. You can set some parameters for the validators to check. Okay, I think actually the image is way too big, so I'm going to use another. Doesn't look good, but that works. As you can see, and mainly because it's a live demo, I'm getting this error. And mostly it's because I forgot to set up one environment variable, which is the blob right token. So let me fill out this one. And okay, so what I'm going to do is for storage is going to create a new database. So you go to Versal, I'm using Versal, and I'm going to create a blob storage. So right now I have fully created way too many, so I'm going to just reuse this one. And here I'm going to copy the blob store variable, and I'm going to add it to the code. So if I try again to create this one, you can see now the required error is not happening. So I'm going to quickly fill this one so we can move into the next section. So now I'm going to create applications. Application was created. So now as an admin, I have the option to just see over here, and I can approve this project. Actually, I can review it also to see all the information they have submitted and approve it. So now it's pending. Also, if you notice, after a few minutes, I was allowed to vote. So I'm not able to do sign up. And this is because I had at the station. And how I can confirm that I got that station, I actually can go over here, check the address, and see that I have a few other stations. This one, for example, is the station that I can vote. I mean, this is the round. Let me see which. And this is the project. Okay, so I'm actually going to sign up first. So if you can see, I got an error when I try to do the sign up. If I need to debug this, I can just grab the error. And I know what's the error. It's invalid schema. But just so you can see. Invalid schema means that there's something wrong with the schema. And the reason primarily is because when I deploy the contracts, I use this schema. But here in the configuration, I use the default one. I did check that this schema exists, but I didn't check that it's were the same schema. So actually, that's where I am getting the error. So right now I'm not allowed to vote because I only approve myself to the other one. So I'm just going to approve myself. And now I'm going to wait a little just so I can sign up again. And then I'm going to vote. When you approve an application, it can take up to 10 minutes. I'm going to do the sign up now, and let's wait for the application to refresh. Right now it's waiting until the application is confirmed. And as you can see now, I can see my ballot, which means that I'm able to vote. So I'm going to add now this project into the ballot. So the voting hasn't started yet. I can move forward the votation quickly if I just change the registration name. So I'm just going to put to tomorrow. Okay, now I can vote. Going to add this project. I can define how much I want to assign. You can see I have 99 votes. So I'm going to, actually before voting for this one, I'm going to create another project just so we can see the full code with different projects. So here's the second one. I'm going to approve it. Then I can vote for two. Updates. And let's continue with the voting now. So I'm going to add two projects to the ballot, but in reality, I'm just going to vote. 5 for one, 29 for now. You can see I have assigned my 99 votes. I'm going to vote now. And it's there. So if you have any feedback, you can fill it out. This now we have 16 minutes to vote, 15 minutes. So let's wait a little and finalize this round to see the results. Now that the voting has ended, we can say that the poll is in a state called closed, and we need to finalize it. And for that, we head to the MACI folder to be specific to the contract one, and we are going to run two commands. The first one is um, the merge command, and this is to process the message. So yeah, I'm going to specify the poll equals 0, which is the poll that we launched, and after this, what we need to do is tally the contract. So right now we are matching the steps of trees, the subroutes. This should be fairly quick. The next one is the one that takes a lot of time. So, okay, so now that we have done the merge, we need to do the tally. And for that, we run the following command. Here's some documentation, but I'm going to fill it out here so you can see what I'm putting. First, we need the poll ID. It's the same one as we use for the merge. Then we need a private key. This is the one that we created at the start of the tutorial. Just remember this private key shouldn't be public, as anyone that has it is able to decrypt the votes. Then these are the output directories and files. The tally file we are going to need it for the front end. And lastly, we need a start block. If you don't add the end block, the start block, you are going to start fetching from block 0, and most likely it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to revert. So let's see why it's not copying. Okay, so let's run this command. I forgot to set up the network. Okay, this is going to take a little of time, depending on how much time since the deployment, and it's going to fetch a lot of logs. So it could take between a few minutes to 15 minutes, 30 minutes. Okay, so this command generates the proofs in the tally file. So we don't chain also for verification. You can see here is done. And I think it specified that the tally file is going to be on the task. Actually put it on the CLI. Okay, so here's where the tricky parts come. So we go to the MACI. So we go to the CLI, and here I generate the proofs. And what I need is the tally.json. So the front end right now requires that this file to be called tally plus the poll ID. In this case, right now we are using 0. And then I need to upload it so the front end can read. And what we're going to do is use the same Versal as we did before, just so it's easier. And I'm going to upload it over here. Oh. Actually, it was on the fly. Tally. If you use Versal, make sure that you don't add random suffix. I already had one, so I'm just going to upload it here. It's uploaded, I think. Let's see. And then what we need is, I need to grab that file. And copy the URL. So this URL goes into the MACI RPGF. Over here. We don't need to append this JSON. We only need the URL. The front end automatically knows that it's going to be tally.0. Okay, so I head back to the front end, refresh. As you can see now, the results are live, and this is because I specified this file. This is the voting I did. That's the reason why you can see it. So here are the results. You can see I voted for project 155 and this one 44. Currently, we don't support fund assignment, so coordinator will need to do it manually, but the next version of MACI is going to allow that. Once you have this result, you can distribute your funds. And that's all. If you have any issues or doubts, please reach out. You can use our Discord, GitHub, create issues and our socials, and we gladly will help you out.